Hello and welcome to Noontime here at the FTN Network. I'm Ryan Noonan of FTN Bets. Coming off of draft night, it's the end of round one. To give you a little bit of a recap, kind of walk through how the night went, and start to take a look a little bit about round two. We don't have really any props out there yet, but we're going to start to get a little idea of what's available, who's drafting, and some maybe potential landing spots, and really unpack the night. It's the draft. We've been doing draft content nonstop, and it was a really, really, really good night. Hope you were able to join us at FTN Bets. If you were not over there, promo code Noonan will save you 10% off. You're going to want to take advantage of that sooner than later. Before the draft even started, it was going to be a quarterback heavy draft, right? We ended up having 5 of the first 15 picks be quarterbacks, but the Schefter bomb that was dropped mid-afternoon was the Aaron Rodgers story. Now, we knew that there was dissension there. We knew that Rodgers really wasn't happy. We know a little bit about Rodgers and personality-wise, and turns out, shocker, he was pretty pissed that they took a quarterback in the first round last year. And they took a backup running back, essentially what was their RB3, who barely played all season. This is a team that was coming off of a 12-4 season. I believe they're 13-3 or 12-4. And then again, even with a airball draft where they got no help, immediate help in their top first 2 picks, either on the offensive side of the ball or the defensive side of the ball. They drafted backups. They, again, go to the NFC Championship game. Rodgers himself wins the league MVP, like a spite MVP. It's basically like Curb Your Enthusiasm, like he has a spite store. Like, it's a spite MVP. And now he's like, you know what? I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this here with you guys anymore. And he's seems like a dude that would be willing to maybe hang him up early. He has other interests. Obviously, the story about, he wants to be the Jeopardy host to take over for Trebek. I'm a Jeopardy guy. Rodgers killed it. Like, I watch it every day anyway, and it's no surprise that he can hang. You got to be super sharp to be a Jeopardy host, and that he was able to get the little idiosyncrasies down, and he was awesome. Anyway, regardless, I don't think he necessarily wants to hang up the cleats, but I feel like he's a guy that's willing to do it if the situation isn't right for him. And there were rumors heading into the draft about some teams getting involved. There was discussions around teams that had tried to get involved earlier in the season. The Rams in particular apparently knocked on that door. The Niners, which makes a lot of sense, especially where they were heading into the draft. And then there's a lot of talk around Denver. And even some reports that a deal was imminent, and that turned out to be not the case. But I feel like that's something that could be pursued a little bit further. And it makes a lot of sense in a lot of different ways, right? So the thought would be that the Packers would not want Rodgers to continue in the NFC. They would not have to face him because they know we'd be trading the MVP. Maybe not super sharp. Maybe we want him to go somewhere else. Rodgers is a West Coast guy. A lot of talk that if he had his way, that he would end up at least a little further west than heading to the east. And Broncos are a team that's really a quarterback away. Really, I mean, not that they'd be a layup with Rodgers, but man, that team is strong defensively. They added to it in the draft. Be interesting to see what they'd have to give up to make a trade work. But the weapons. I mean, there's a strong offensive line. Cortland Sutton's back. Jerry Jeudy, obviously, first round pick last year. KJ Hamler they got later in that draft. Noah Fant is an elite tight end. Tim Patrick's a free agent. We don't know what's going to happen there, but there are weapons. Melvin Gordon and Mike Boone in the backfield. There's enough there. And the defense is solid. Vic Fangio is a defensive-minded coach. Denver would be on the map instantly, obviously. Difficult division. You got the Chargers on the come here, obviously, with Justin Herbert. They added a tackle tonight and really, I think, improved themselves just by staying home. And kind of where they were, it seemed like that was going to happen. They were going to get a impactful player no matter what they did. And, obviously you have to deal with Patrick Mahomes in the NFC West a couple times a year too. But, this is obviously the news heading into day 2 and day 3, or round 2 and round 3, and the weekend here. And what happens? These deals seem to go down more likely in a draft weekend where teams are more likely to be talking to each other and have access, and you get your decision makers for the most part together. So be very interested to see what happens with that. Obviously, that supersedes any draft news, really. So definitely what we need to track moving forward. Really good night betting. And, shout out to Elliot Christ here at FTN. Elliot we started hammering some props really, really early. I know had a massive portfolio heading into the night. I know it was a profitable one for him. I don't know where he finished on the night. I believe north of 30 units. So no, I don't really care what your volume is. Your profitable 30 units in an evening, that's a hell of a night. So shout out to Elliot. I know he's been grinding the props very, very hard. Has made a lot of us a lot of money here this weekend, and wrote a lot of free articles. A lot of our stuff over at FTN Bets is behind the paywall. And again, you can see why, 30 units. But a lot of the stuff was free. So hopefully people were able to get on board, get a taste of the quality of work that we have going on here. So shout out to Elliot. I also had a really good night. I'll share this with you guys too. Bet Tracker grades for me for the night. I did not have a ton of bets, but I ended up positive just shy of 22 units on the night. Fantastic night. We'll work my way up quickly through the card just to show you a little bit of what I had here. Early on, and this was an Elliott call too, was Mac Jones working bottom to top. Mac Jones draft position under 18.5. That was a problem when it came out. It just should not have been there. It obviously ended up getting a little closer than we thought, moved down quickly to 15.5, and then obviously spent the majority of the last month at 3.5. Really, it was a matter of the 49ers deciding to take him or not. So that number, the closing line value on that was tremendous in comparison to where it ended up. So that was a nice win with Mac Jones going 15 to New England. Next, I had Micah Parsons, just seemed to be falling in a lot of the mocks. Ended up being really close. He went 12, but just some off-field decisions and questions that kind of impacted him. Once he got through that 9 spot, I felt like with Denver, we were feeling pretty safe with Parsons. And then obviously the trade happened. And that was a nice one too. First running back drafted, I took ATN. One of my only L's on the night. Just was a plus bet. There was a lot of teams that had ATN first on their board. I thought that there was a lot of talk. I mocked him to the Jets. I thought that there was a possibility that the Jets could want to take him and move up a little bit before the Steelers drafted, and just in case the Steelers happen to have him higher than they had Najee Harris on their board. So I thought, again, getting plus money where Harris was, laying almost 250 or so. I thought ATN was the play. Thought it made some sense. Didn't work, but hey, they're not all winners. What else we got here? Player to be drafted first. These two Bama receivers this line sat there on DraftKings at -112 for way too long. Became really evident that the majority of the teams had Waddle higher on their board and had mocked him to 6, and he went there 6 to Miami. Also landed 12 of 12, well, not 12 of 12, but 12 player team matches in my mock as well. So really good night. And being plugged in. Again, we're speculating on people that are speculating essentially. But again, if you grind this pretty hard and parse through some of the information and have good sources that could be connected to other good sources, things can work in your favor. So it did here tonight. This Waddle number at -112 ended up closing, I think, almost close to 200. Became really evident that Waddle was the guy over Smith. J.C. Horn, these two, both the Waddle over Smith and the J.C. Horn. I wish I was more aggressive in hindsight in taking larger positions on this. I felt very strong about the Waddle play and the Horn one as well. Horn just continued to trend positively, very similar to the ATN thing. It was pegged as Patrick Surtain being the number one corner, but there were some teams as they got closer to the draft that Jeff definitely had J.C. Horn as their first corner on the board. Just a different skill set at corner than Surtain, so it made sense that some teams would profile him as their corner number one. And that's what happens. He went before comfortably under the 13.5 and should have got in. I wanted to get on the horn in a more aggressive play on first defender off the board, but I felt like I had lost the best of the number in a big way, so I stayed away from that. But I know that was a good one for people tonight as well. Jalen Phillips under 21.5. That got close. Miami at 18 took him. Phillips had a amazing pro day and just profiled as a better fit at the next level than his teammate Gregory Rousseau, who a lot of people had ahead of Phillips earlier in the mock draft season. But once the measurables came out in Phillips, it seemed pretty obviously that he would be maybe even one of the first defenders off the board. So thought there were a lot of landing spots for him, including 21 with the Colts. It was kind of like his backboard, I felt like. Thought that we were going to lose it. I thought he was going to go as high as 14 in Minnesota when they traded out. I thought that was a worry there is one of the Phillips outs, knowing that the Jets, who were trading up, weren't going to be taking him. But it all worked out in the end. Comfortable under on Phillips. Trey Lance, again, wish I would have gone a little bit heavier on Lance as the number 3 pick. Made that as soon as it really became clear that Justin Fields was not in consideration anymore. And again, just if it felt like even it wasn't really a 50-50 toss-up, I didn't think, but even if it was, give me something closer to getting plus money. So that was the position on Lance at 3-1. Eric Stokes under 47.5. Shout out to Evan Silva. That was all Silva. He was adamant that Stokes was going to be under this number, thought that he had a great chance to go in the first round, and of course he did. He went to the Packers at 49. Stokes is pretty tall and lean, but like track fast, and this is a 3-corner league at this point. So you're seeing really smart teams for the most part understand. We saw the Browns grabbing Greg Newsome from Northwestern. Like, you got to have 2 really above average to compete now. Like, it just puts you in a really good spot. So many teams running 3 and 4 receiver sets. You want to have a lot of good secondary help. And that's why some of these guys, I'm surprised are still out there, but Stokes found his way into the back of the first round and cashed a 2-unit play there. Linebacker, first position taken for Washington at 3-1. I really like this, especially in the last, I'd say, 72 hours, seeing a lot of mocks that I would weight heavily that had a variation of linebackers going to Washington. There was a lot of talk about Washington maybe moving up and positioning themselves for a quarterback in case one fell, that you do have a strong defense, but not necessarily at the linebacker positions, more at the front 4. I thought that there were a couple different guys. JOK from Notre Dame, who's still out there. There's a lot of talk about, the guy that they ended up taking, Jamin Davis, and it makes sense. They needed a linebacker, and I thought there was good value there. It was plus 175 for them to take defense instead of offense. Everyone thought that they were in play for an offensive lineman as well. But I wanted to hone in on the position. It felt very clear that if they were to go defense, it was going to be linebacker, and that paid off. Jamar Chase under 5.5, 2 units. Again, this stayed at FanDuel at minus 122 for way longer than I thought. This was way worse juice over on DraftKings. So I made a 2-unit play on Chase, and that hit nicely. Great way to kind of start the night. Over 4.5 cornerbacks. This was my biggest play of the night. 3-unit play. And it cashed collectively with a combo with Stokes. Like we just talked about, the Stokes prop under 47.5. He goes 49 to Green Bay, and Stokes is the 5th corner off the board. A just glorious moment to cap a great evening. Fantastic play. And I thought there were a lot of outs for this too. I thought that there could have been 6. I was really surprised when the Saints didn't take a cornerback. I didn't think that they wanted to try to move up. There's a lot of whispers about them moving up. I thought they wanted to do that to secure a corner. I thought there were some other guys in that range that made a lot of sense. So it was great to get the Stokes play when the Saints bypassed the position. 3-unit wager. Fantastic stuff. Then you see first five, basically an exacta parlay with the one on top there. Lawrence, Wilson, Lance, Pitts, Chase, cashing at 9-1. I made the same play, but with Mac Jones. That was one of my other losses for the night. I still thought that was completely mispriced. Once the Lance thing hit, we were just making sure that Chase hit as well. Needed Chase obviously here, and then the previous mentioned 2-unit play under 5.5 and Yahtzee. We were good to go. It was again nailing the first five. Had those first five. Actually nailed the first 7 in my mock draft, including Waddle at 6 and then Penei Sewell 7 in Detroit. Yeah, really good start to the night, and it was fantastic stuff. Last one was running backs over 1.5. This even ended up moving to a boost, but this sat out there for a while. Actually, for a little bit, there were some decent numbers on 0 running backs in the first round, and then it just became more evident that the Pittsburgh news was really clear that they were taking Najee Harris. Basically, everyone plugged into that organization had them on Harris, and it seemed like both the Jets, or I guess 3 teams, the Jets, the Jaguars, and the Bills, all seemed very interested in Travis Etienne at different levels. He ended up reuniting with his teammates in college, Trevor Lawrence, and going to Jacksonville. And good stuff. Can't complain. Really nice night. Up 21, almost 21.7 units on the night. Fantastic stuff, guys. So if you're really good about that, join us again over at FTN Bets. Promo code Noonan is going to save you 10%. This tracker is accessible. I make a bet. I put it in the tracker, and it tweets out notifications from our FTN Alerts account. And often we're in our Discord as well, updating our subscribers that place the bet. Check out the tracker. A lot of our subs know they just stay in there before major events or before games start or things like that. They can go in and pick any of our contributors at FTN and look at their tracker in any of our sports. So got lots of PGA stuff in there as well. Our MLB team is killing it. NBA playoffs kicking off. And again, football stuff. We'll have win totals coming up soon, division bets, all the preseason stuff. You're going to want to get over there and check it out. FTN Bets. Noonan will get you 10% off. All right. Quick review of the draft. We'll talk through a little bit about some of the things I think that went pretty well. Again, 5 quarterbacks going in the top 15. I think the Bears gave up a ton. They did. They gave up a ton to go up and get Justin Fields. And it is almost irrelevant. It's similar to the Trubisky deal in the sense that it doesn't really matter if the quarterback is good. And unlike Trubisky, I think Justin Fields is legit. I personally think Justin Fields should have been in consideration, if not the number 2 pick to the Jets. I definitely like Fields more as a prospect than I do Zach Wilson. I think Wilson can be fine, but I just think Fields was everything that he was supposed to be. He was a basically 1A, 1B prospect coming out of high school, heading into college with Trevor Lawrence. Goes to Georgia, has some stuff there. We don't really know all the details too, and transfers over to Ohio State, right? Major programs as a guy that was a massive prospect in high school, and then all he does is go out and perform. And I know that he was probably a little bit better maybe in the year prior, but he's got all the tools. I just thought it was a shame that he wasn't even in consideration. I thought that he was really being done a disservice, and I hope he goes out and kills it. The Bears, man, the bar is not high in Chicago to be a great quarterback here. So let's see what happens with Fields. Again, it's a organization that needs to win now. Ryan Pace understands that probably not getting it done with Andy Dalton, and Nick Foles isn't the answer. They gave up draft picks to go up and get Nick Foles, which is crazy. Now he's like your 3rd quarterback, and you're paying him a bunch of it's bad. So I hope that Fields is able to be successful, and the Bears are going to need it. Otherwise, they're going to be in a lot of trouble. Mentioned earlier, I really loved the Mac Jones pick for New England. Look, Mac Jones was obviously in strong consideration. He was the massive betting favorite to go number 3 for the last 14 days. And we give Kyle Shanahan a lot of credit. We believe in Kyle Shanahan and know he knows what he's doing. And they were comfortable making that trade up from 12 to 3, giving up a ton of equity in the draft. And they were comfortable with Mac Jones. For the Patriots to be able to land Mac Jones and not have to move up. Like, it's great that the Bears got Fields, but they gave up a lot to get him. The Pats were able to stay home and land Mac Jones, who, you know, we get it. Like, we've seen the pictures, real solid dad bod, which is a little early for dad bod, but like, he could play football. And he was not someone that I thought should be in consideration for 3, but 15 is very different than 3. And again, not having to move up to get him. You know, he's not an athletic quarterback in the sense that he is going to, you know, tuck it and run, but he's athletic enough that he can move in the pocket and be good in space and has quick feet. It's very clear and evident that he is a quick decision maker and can read the defense. And yeah, I think it's a great fit for them, and they were able to do it without moving up at all. Same thing I mentioned for the Chargers. I thought them staying home and being able to get Rashawn Slater was great. I know there was a lot of whispers about them trying to trade up to maybe get Penei Sewell. You just needed to protect their best asset with Justin Herbert, build on that offensive line. I know that they were also in consideration for probably either a corner if one of them would have fallen, but also an edge rusher. And I think they can maybe address that a little bit later. I thought Slater, who, again, some teams had as their top tackle on the board, made a lot of sense. He's ready to come in and contribute right away. You got to love, obviously, what Jacksonville was able to do. Again, you get that number 1 pick. It's easy to do so. And then adding his running back, Travis Etienne, I thought was really good. That's a sneaky, like, that offensive line's pretty solid. Laviska Shenault, DJ Chark, Marvin Jones in free agency. Like, that offense is starting to take shape. And if they can get some play from the defensive side, they'll need to address that. I think they do pretty early here in the second round at the top of the board. But a good start for Jacksonville. Again, Miami has 2 picks as well. I think they probably would have liked to have traded down, but I like what they did when they stayed. Jalen Wall is a difference maker. Obviously trying to, again, invest in their quarterback and give Tua everything he can to be successful. Bringing in Will Fuller in free agency is outstanding. Devontae Parker can stay healthy. Again, really turning the page in Miami. That's been offense has been a disaster for a while, and now all of a sudden starting to turn the corner. And then Jalen Phillips, talked about him earlier in the bet section, just a really great athlete, and love what they're going to do there. So very interesting. Some teams that I'm not sure I agree with what they did, but again, you know, not doing draft grades. The Giants did something really great. They got a boatload to move down from 11 to 20 with Chicago, but then they took Kadarius Toney, and I thought that was really, I thought it was a reach. I didn't think it was a position in need, so it was interesting in hindsight. Like, they were really in play for Devonta Smith, which was rumored a lot, and then smart of Philadelphia to move up and really lock up their guy, getting ahead of them at 11, making that trade in the division, which is very interesting. Moving from, it was really that 10, 11, 12 was all the NFC East, and Philly moving up to get ahead to take Kadarius Toney, who I'm not really crazy about as a prospect anyway. Little undersized, broke out a little late. Obviously is a dynamite with the ball in his hand, but is that really a need? Like, they added Kenny Galladay. You still have Sterling Shepard. Darius Slayton on the outside. They added John Ross, who was a top 10 pick just a few years ago. It just doesn't seem like a need when they have so many other issues. Offensive line, they could have added an edge rusher. There were a lot of things that made more sense than adding, kind of overdrafting wide receiver that a lot of people aren't crazy about. So I thought that they did well by trading back for the first time in Gettleman's history, but then kind of a head scratcher with the pick. It didn't make a lot of sense in my opinion. Next with the Jets. Look, I think Zach Wilson can be fine. Again, I think Justin Fields should have been the pick. Zach Wilson, went to BYU, wasn't really great early in his career. Looking like maybe a second, third round pick type prospect. BYU is an independent school, so they don't have a normal schedule to build into their conference play. Last year through COVID, they pieced together this really garbage schedule, and Zach Wilson was awesome. You also have at BYU, you have sometimes these guys go on these mission trips for a couple of years, then they come back to school. So sometimes you have some guys that are a little bit older, and that's what happened. BYU had 3 offensive linemen that were 24 and older. Against 18, 19-year-olds, that was an advantage for them. So he wasn't pressured a lot. I just think that he obviously has skills. He's a great shorts and t-shirt guy. Like, he's going to look good. He's got the, makes those wow throws we saw in the combine, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens there in New York. And then again, I don't know that they needed to move up to grab the offensive lineman. They must have really loved Elijah Vera Tucker, who was a prospect that a lot of teams liked. Again, moving up to do so seemed a little unnecessary, but they got their guy, and proof is in the pudding. We'll see what happens there. The Raiders, no one ever knows the Raiders are going to do. They're impossible to mock. They definitely have their own draft board, and it happened again tonight. Alex Leatherwood, who was a tail end of the first round prospect for a lot of people, was not a prospect ahead of some of the other guys that went. But again, they have a need on the offensive line, so not shocking that they went there. And they got a guy that they apparently had above some other ones. Christian Darrisaw, Tevin Jenkins, a couple guys that I definitely would have thought would have gone ahead of Leatherwood. So we'll see. The Saints mentioned I thought they were going to take a cornerback. They took Peyton Turner, a defensive end from Houston. There was some talk. I think Schefter even had said that Turner was a guy that had been getting some first-round buzz. He's obviously made sense that he did. But, thought that a corner made sense there. But we'll see what happens. Again, they have some holes on the defensive side anyway. So thought that was pretty peculiar. So let's take a look at what's going on for day 2. All right, let's take a look here real quick. This shows the draft order when we get started. You see pick 33 there, first pick in the second round to Jacksonville. Jacksonville needs some defensive help. Added 2 offensive players there. Jets, again, another team that was in the mix for one of the running backs. They added, again, a quarterback and an offensive lineman. You can definitely see them addressing some defensive needs perhaps here. Maybe a receiver. Could be interesting to see what they do there. Atlanta. A lot of people thought Atlanta was a good spot to trade up. I imagine they add defensive help here. Pretty solid offensive line. Again, adding a player like Kyle Pitts is going to be outstanding for them. Miami continues to have a ton of picks. And, again, they went both one offensive player, one defensive player. They can really do whatever they want there. I'd expect the Bengals at 38 to add an offensive lineman. Again, feels like they came down to Penei Sewell and Jamar Chase there. Made sense that they could take a solid offensive lineman with this pick at 38. I get a difference maker with Chase. Keep their quarterback happy, and now they can protect him with the pick at 38. 39 Carolina. Carolina now has their every pick from last year, and then their pick so far this year with J.C. Horn, who's a baller. Love it. I love that pick. All defense, all the defensive side of the football. So they lost Curtis Samuel in free agency. Do they do something to address the wide receiver position or something on offense there? It'd be very interesting to see what they do there. Same thing. Probably get that wide receiver room in Detroit is pretty bad with Brashard Perriman, Quintus Cephas, and Tyrell Williams. with some of the receivers that are on the board. Be interesting to see what happens with Detroit there. They could definitely add there. New England too at 46. I could see New England getting in the mix of the receiver position. Same thing with Vegas. Interested to see. There's some offensive linemen, wide receivers that are available. Let's take a look at some of the best players remaining here. This is an ESPN rank. JOK from Notre Dame, a guy I thought was going to go in the first round for sure. Really exciting football player. Very surprised that he did not he did not come off the board. I think it's pretty clear that either Trayvon Mooring or JOK are the first pick in the second round to Jacksonville. A lot of people had Mooring being mocked to Jacksonville with their second pick. They ended up going ATN, which makes sense. Could see them taking Mooring or JOK being surprised that he's there. It's kind of just a utility guy. And sometimes that is like code for I don't have a position, but this is actually like a utility guy who is a linebacker that can defend, can rush. In this day and age where you need to cover tight ends, you need to have elite athletes like that. I think he makes a lot of sense. So be interested to see what happens with him. Oh, oops. I need to go back. Elijah Moore and really Terrence Marshall too. I'm not sure where they got Terrence Marshall. Absolutely ballers. I think Marshall is a top 4 receiver in this class. Apparently some questions with his medicals. Elijah Moore too is someone that people absolutely love, and I understand it. He is awesome. Both of them still on the board, which is a little surprising considering I thought that they'd come off. Marshall not so much, but I thought the Bears were in play for Elijah Moore, but when they stayed home, or when they went up to make the trade, I'm sorry, that made sense that they took themselves out of that position. You can see some great offensive linemen here too. Let's see if we can hone in on this lineman-wise. Some of these guys I'm surprised are on the board. Tevin Jenkins, as I mentioned, thought he would be gone. Eichenberg, I thought might go to Baltimore. They became a position of need when they made that trade with Kansas City last week. I think you see a couple of these guys go pretty early. Sam Cosmi from Texas as well. If your team needs an offensive lineman, I think you see really all these guys, at least these top 4, maybe even Jalen Mayfield too. I mean, could be a pretty heavy tackle round here in round 2. Wide receivers, not a great wide receiver class, but pretty good. And I think it kind of depends on the type of guy that you like. I imagine Moore, Marshall, and Rondell Moore are definitely guys that are going to go tomorrow in day 2 or day 3. It should all be day 2 guy or round 2 guys. I'm sorry. Like them a lot. Tutu Atwell's really small. Be interesting to see if he goes that high. But man, Elijah Moore, Terrence Marshall, absolute ballers. I think they go probably in the top half of the second round. Definitely be on the lookout for that. Some of these other guys are profile. They're interesting. Like, I could see the Patriots apparently really like Estridge here. He could do a lot of things, be a special teams guy, also return kicks. Definitely feels like a Patriots type of pick. And you get some other really interesting prospects. Schwartz is track fast and big. Tylan Wallace, a lot of people absolutely love. Nico Collins, unfortunately, was buried in not a real friendly pass offense at the University of Michigan, but people love Collins as a skill prospect, size, speed guy. Amari Rodgers, I'm not in love with, but again, produced in college. And one guy I really like, they have way deep here, not a guy that we're going to have go tomorrow. I guess they do not like Seth Williams, but I like Seth Williams. He's buried down here. So yes, sneaky deep receiver class. I think you see some of these guys, some smaller guys. Terrence Marshall is an alpha on the outside. But both Elijah and Rondell Moore are profiling more as slot guys. Same thing with Estridge. So we'll see what happens there. But, it's going to be really interesting. So be on the lookout for different props coming out. Everything hasn't happened. I've been trying to hold off here to see if I can see any bets and could talk about some of those tonight. But I can expect some defense early in the second round, and particularly in the first round pick with Jacksonville, the first pick of the second round. And I think you're going to see some offensive linemen and some of these wide receivers go. And it's going to be an exciting round 2 and round 3. These tend to be a little bit more of the fantasy rounds because you don't see a lot of running backs. This is not a good running back class. You see Javonte Williams come off in round 2, I imagine. And that's probably it. Maybe a Trey Sermon or a Kenny Gainwell. Chuba Hubbard, maybe these guys in round 2 or round 3. But that's really it. It's a really weak running back class. But again, join us. Tail us over at FTN Bets. Again, that's good for FTN Daily if you're a DFS guy. FTN Fantasy if you're just a season-long guy who's going to start doing best ball drafts now, or you're getting into your Dynasty League. FTN Fantasy, promo code Noonan works there too, saving you 10% off. So appreciate you hanging out with me. Hopefully we have a profitable rounds 2 and round 3 as well. So again, hit the subscribe button. You'll get all of the cool content going on here at FTN that's free. Most of our good stuff, too, is behind the paywall. So take advantage of this. Be a new, fresh noontime for you every week. So we'll see you again soon. Thanks.